Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie. I am the senior editor here, and I'm thrilled to bring you a discussion covering all the fundamentals of customer centricity. And joining me for that conversation is Lee Jones, the director of Elevate Performance, the customer and employee experience consultancy. Lee, thanks very much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Charlie. I'm really good, thank you. It stopped raining after about 3 days of torrential downpour, so I'm getting fresh air and feeling good. Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Charlie.
Absolutely, that's great. Whenever I interview anybody from the UK, they always tell me it's raining outside, which
Always about
is
the
an
weather.
interesting trend. But yeah, it's great to have you join me, and let's kind of get right down to it. Customer centricity. I guess the best place for me to start is by asking you to simply define how would you define customer centricity?
Yeah, it's a great question, Charlie. I think customer centricity for me is almost the culture. Now, I'm going to kind of tear up the word culture in a minute, and I'll explain why. But a lot of people recognize that word culture. So it's the culture that sits in the organization. That means that things happen in that organization which are less transactional and less reactive. So there's some organizations that are constantly doing the right thing for the customer. They are constantly innovating and finding ways of being better for their customers. And I think what that means is when you've got things like consumer duty, the FCA are introducing levels of standard right now that some businesses, more financially regulated business, have to adhere to, whilst everyone else is firefighting. These type of organizations that you call customer-centric are not sweating because they are already doing the right things for customer. And I think, it's not just about getting your ship in order and being ready. It's the fact that no matter what happens in that business, there is just that focus on customer. So I could be going about my day, and whether I'm in a frontline role and I need to step outside of, maybe I've got the permission to step outside a process and do something for that customer that is just the right thing to do. Customer-centric organizations provide that permission and provide that license without reprimand. But also it's, for me, what happens on the inside of the business as well. And to use an example here, I can think of a financial service business that I've been speaking to recently. And they're spotting things like really uncustomer friendly statements, financial statements. And most of these senior leaders in that business would recognize that we've had a problem for it for some time. But unless my KPI drives me to fix it that month, or someone's told me to from above, then I do nothing. And actually, customer-centric organizations are the ones that walk by that and don't carry on. They're the ones that pick that up and just go, I'm going to fix that as an individual. Whilst my objectives this week, my KPIs, don't target me to do that, it's just the right thing to do. So it's the right thing to do with customers, and it's the right thing to do when customers aren't stood in front of us. And I think, there's a number of businesses that just always do the right thing. And the other thing for me is when I say culture is a company-wide thing. And it doesn't matter what site or person or region, or maybe even country that I'm dealing with, I get the same experience every time because it's just the way we behave. And I think you can only have that if you have what we call customer centricity. So I'll try and define it, but give some examples. But I think that for me is a definition.
Yeah, that's a really great definition. It's interesting that you already gave examples too, because I think it's really great to learn from other companies when we talk about customer centricity, because it is so difficult to define. I don't know if you can maybe share some more examples of companies that you consider customer centric and why you consider them to be so.
Yeah, and I think actually I might bridge the last answer that I gave with another example, but I'm not going to put a badge on this one because this would be unfair, because this is highlighting a bit of a failure in terms of customer. And this is where consumer duty brings a slightly different angle to this world, or focus on customer service and customer experience. Because in the past, before consumer duty, you could deliver a really good customer service. Customer service is the service that I interpret that I got today from the business that I'm dealing with. And I could be working with that business for many years, and they could be, I could be a customer for many years, and I could be happy. But actually, Consumer Duty now focused on whether it was a good customer outcome. And there's many examples in the insurance world right now where I might phone up at my renewal period and I might have a very wonderful, polite customer service handler that will walk me through and just renew my product. And I go, that was brilliant. They're lovely. I love them over there in that business. And actually, a few of those businesses have been caught out recently because what they're doing is they're keeping customers on the wrong product for them, which basically means they're making additional revenue and profit where they maybe don't need to because they're not taking the time and effort to put that customer on the right product. Now, that customer is blissfully unaware that's not a good customer outcome. Yeah, it's a good customer service. So actually, when we start to look at the organizations that we think excel in this space, I think it's really important to recognize the ones that are truly driving great customer outcome as well as great customer experiences. And I think that really is quite important because it means that our company are doing the right thing for us and fighting our corner. We can feel safe in their hands. So some of the businesses or some of the organizations, I think, if you think customer experience and then look at customer service, there's some organizations, you think Southwest Airlines in America, Google them, go on YouTube, watch their videos. This organization are famous for providing an amazing in-flight experience in terms of, the crew and flight attendants that will do something pretty special on the tannoy. But it's not just that. They are truly centric in terms of looking after that passenger experience and making you feel like you are truly blessed to be flying with them. Virgin Airlines have always strived for that. There's many other airlines like Qatar Airlines and Emirates that equally have such an amazing experience. So you kind of have to in the premium airline space. Disney, anybody that's been to Disney will always be wowed by the experience they had. But to bring it back down into more of a customer service world, I think the more globally recognized brand that I would use is Amazon. Now, whilst Amazon don't always get the best press for certain aspects of their business, the one thing you can never argue is that customer experience is exceptional. It's so easy to buy. It's very, very easy to complain or inquire. If you have a problem, you're a few clicks of a button away from getting that problem resolved. And in most cases, especially if you're a loyal customer, you quite often will get refunded at a touch of a button and sometimes don't even need to send the product back. Now, when you actually speak to a customer handler in Amazon, they are empowered to take any product offline with only one complaint. They don't have to escalate to take a product offline. If they feel that it's not a product that Amazon would be proud to be representing right now, their contact handlers can take those products offline. I think that's incredible empowerment. There's not many businesses that would be able to do that. Now, if you go back to Jeff Bezos 10, 12 years ago, when he really truly was scaling this business, was famous for being a true customer representative. So what I mean by that is he would have board meetings where he would save one chair and he would say, that's for the customer and no one's allowed to sit in it. And that's quite a demonstrable action. It's quite symbolic. And I think customer-centric organizations usually have these little symbolic gestures that says, we're serious about customer. I'm serious about customer. I would like you to be serious about customer as an employee. Because the best organizations role model that. They don't ask people to do stuff they're not willing to demonstrate or role model themselves. But apparently, whenever making a board decision in Amazon, they would turn as a board to the chair and say, what do you think the customer would do with that? So it's kind of putting yourself in the customer's shoes, taking yourself out of the decision-making process and maybe forgetting my finance hat or my operations hat or my IT hat and thinking, what would the customer experience be like? So I think that's quite powerful. And therefore, some of the examples I gave, probably not a coincidence. I think, there's some organizations like First Direct, Ocado, John Lewis, who we'd probably all say that we tend to have a fairly consistent experience with. And I think we've known those businesses to demonstrate some things we think a customer-centric business should do. And that's not just in the conversation, the ownership, the accountability, and the pleasantness that I get from somebody I'm talking to, but actually every aspect of their business.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of really great examples there, Lee. And I think especially back to the Amazon example too, because there's such a learning in that for everyone. If you're leading a service team or a sales team or a market team, is to consider the customer in every decision that you make alongside the employee and the business implications too. And yeah, lots of really good stuff there. And I know that you've also come up with some best practices for achieving customer centricity that any business can learn from, and there's 3 of those, and I do want to get into those now. The first one that I do have on my list is accept that customer centricity is not all about values. What can you tell us about this?
So been talking a lot about this lately, and quite often you open it to the group and you say, what do you think drives a customer-centric organization, or what do you think senior leaders think, so that we've got to represent it or replicate it in our own business? And quite often people will say things like, good training, and we treat our employees well as well, and that's really important. Or we've got a great customer charter, or a set of service principles, and they're all really, really sensible. And often people will say, values are really important when it comes to customer centricity, because that's the inside stuff, not just the outside stuff. And I agree and I disagree with that. And the reason for just kind of putting a bit of a health warning on is what I say is values are important, but don't make values the answer to everything. And the reason for saying that is we've worked with a number of organizations that have said, right, we've got to get our values right and our customer charter right. And I agree with that. And they write some really good words down, and they make some principles that are really sound. And you think, you probably expect those things from an organization that treats its people well and treats its customer well. And then, 2 weeks later, we're critiquing the words and we're rewriting the words, and we go through sign-off process number 12. And 3 months later, we're still going through the process of getting those signed off. And what I would say is, it doesn't really matter which one you put out there. It doesn't really care. It doesn't really matter if you use the word care or empathy, right? The intent is right. And the key thing with the values is get some good values, involve your business in creating them, sign them off, move on. Because it's the behavior that makes the difference. It's the leadership demonstration of those values that really matters. No one's going to judge my leadership on whether I really was empathetic or whether I was caring, right? It's really the demonstration or not of being those things or not being those things. And the hard yards for leaders is getting out of the room and moving away from the words and going out and doing some things that takes an army of people, which is your employees, to be more customer centric. And there's a number of things you will not be surprised to hear that I could share that I think those leaders need to demonstrate. But write the words down, get them out, move on, and connect things to them. That's important. So, in your communications, go back and tie up where in your values this is important, and keep your values in your customer charter to connect it to everything you do. But in its design, get it written down and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something you see, especially in contact centers, where you kind of see like a poster on the wall with a set of values kind of just growing dust, and it's just not connected to the work the agent's doing every time. And then you'd ask a leader often about customer centricity and what they're doing, and then they'll kind of point to the values, and yet the agents don't necessarily even know what's on the poster. So I think that's a really interesting point that really kind of hit home for me. And your second point is also very interesting, considering our talk of culture earlier, and that is kind of embrace how team climate eats company culture for breakfast. What can you tell me about this one too?
Yeah, this is huge for us, and actually doesn't just show up in our customer experience work. It shows up in everything we do, whether we're doing leadership development, management development, sales work, culture work. And I'm gonna screw up the word culture here in this next statement, but for us, culture is nebulous, right? Culture is just a shadow of leadership. And the thing is, it's a shadow of many leaders' leadership. So I could work in the same office and have a different feeling about how it feels around here to work in this organization. Therefore, that's my identity to culture. That's my representation of culture. Then you might, and we might sit next to each other. And for us, the reason for that is because everybody has a different culture. Now, whilst you can kind of go, well, yeah, no, the culture was like this, and most people could generally agree. Actually, what's more relevant is the team climate that you experience, because that is your team around you, your employees around you, your colleagues, and really relevant is your leader. And the thing is, you can have organizations that have got poor cultures or are non-customer centric, to bring it down to this example, that have fantastic leaders, and there might be a really happy team in a really toxic culture, and vice versa. You can have a great culture, you can have a toxic leader, and therefore you've got a bad team climate, and you've got high attrition. People don't give discretionary effort. They don't want to be here. They don't look out for each other, and they don't feel like they can bring their authentic selves to work. So with any piece of work, we're always focused on team climate first, because if you get lots of little team climates working, guess what? The sum of all parts is a great culture. So stop focusing on culture. And there's a reason for that as well, because I hear leaders say, well, if we can fix our culture, then we'll get innovation, we'll get commercial results, we'll look after our customers, we'll sell more, and we'll be a successful organization. That can take 7 to 10 years to get the sum of all parts right. It can be a big long tail. So for us, if you focus on the team climate, that's something you can do today. You can go and lead differently today. And this is really a relevant example. I'm going to go back to the values piece. Have you ever worked in a corporate organization and someone says to you, what are the 5 values? And I don't know about you, but I worked in 15 years in an organization, and I still probably couldn't remember all 5 of them by the time I left. You always remember 1 or 2, and it's usually the ones that resonate with you. But if anyone says to you, how you led, I don't think you're usually scraping around for an answer. I think you can pretty much answer it instantly. And that's, again, goes back to my point. Don't worry about the words. It's the behaviors that matter. And, within a team climate, how do we create a good one then? And because there are things that leaders do, but also just a caveat of that, it's not just leaders. Anyone can influence people around you. If you are longer tenure in your team, then you have an influence on people. But if we roll it up to the leader of a function for now, if we scale it up to the most senior person in the room, and look at some of the things that we think are important to create customer centricity, then we would say that first and foremost, what you need is a leader that can create meaning for people. So is able to share the ambition, connect people to the why. And that's not just about sending an email or a PowerPoint round saying, oh, we've got a great new customer initiative, please read this PowerPoint. It's about connecting with every single person and getting them to understand it and checking their understanding, and then asking for what you think about that. Because some people have a barrier or a belief that it's not the right thing to do. And you don't get that from a all hands call or a PowerPoint deck or an email. It's important to connect people to it on an individual basis and get them really behind something. Really importantly, leaders need to create a safe space. They need to build psychological safety and trust within their team. And guess what? People tend to perform, and they tend to want to try and innovate and do the right thing for customer. But you've got to be, you can't just do that and be a great leader, create trust and not be proximate. You've got to avoid willful blindness. You've got to be in front of your people and in front of your customers. Best for service organizations, customer-centric organizations, the leaders take calls. The leaders go to their retail outlets and they serve customers, not because there's a little quota that says it will look good and it will be an act of role modeling, which of course is, and that's important because it's that symbolic action that I talked about. But because that's where you spot the problems that get in the way for customers and employees. Guess what? As a leader, you're usually the person that can fix it too. So proximity is important. Role modeling is, not do as I say, but do as I do. And as a leader, you're always on show. So if I say to you, I want you to be customer centric, and I then behave in a way that isn't customer focused or isn't congruent with what I'm asking you to do, then guess what? I'm not going to do it. We've got to create permission in people, and that's a leader accountability and responsibility. You can't just say, Charlie, you have permission. Go and do the right thing by customer. Because quite often when you talk to a board, they will say, we give our people permission. And you go down through the organization and you speak to the front line and say, do you have permission? And they go, absolutely not. No, I've got to get a £1 spend signed off by my manager. And great service organizations are ones where the employee goes, no, I absolutely know my manager has my back. And it might throw my AHT out, or it might throw my, I'm not going to get to 5 jobs today when I'm out in the field, but I know it's the right thing to do for customer. And at the end of the day, my manager isn't going to reprimand me for that. They're going to say, well done, that was the right thing to do for that customer. And not only is it the ability to allow me to do that, but it's also catching people doing things right. We call that illuminating awesome. It's saying to someone, well done, praising progress. You tried something, and that's the thing I'm giving you feedback on. Good customer-centric cultures don't tend to walk around just constantly critiquing and looking for all the things that are negative and developmental. So a question: if you're a call center manager, do you listen to a call? Do you instantly go and look for the things to do differently in that call, or do you just catch people doing things right? Because guess what? Catching people doing things right means that behavior shows up more. Less of the bad stuff doesn't. And that's where we like to focus our energy. That doesn't mean it's not okay. That doesn't mean that you can't feed back. But when you do catch people doing things right more often, you quite often build a license to be the manager that can give feedback, because people respect you more. Couple more really quick ones. As a leader, you've got to know what good service sounds like and looks like for the front line. It's not just the QA's job, it's a manager's job, because when you know what good looks like, you can coach it. Because the answer isn't, what do you think you could do differently next time you speak to a customer? Because if I don't know, I don't know. That's behavioral coaching. Skills coaching is going, let me show you, or let me explain. And role modeling and pace setting, and good service leaders know exactly what good looks like. Because you find your bright spots, you find your high performers, you capture it, you replicate it, you bottle it, you train it. And that's what we like to do when we're working in businesses. And the last thing is you've got to have continual improvement. You've got to have a way of fixing the stuff when things go wrong. So that's quite a big one, but it's huge for us, because if you have to focus on climate, but you don't know things to focus on, then what drives customer centricity?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of really great stuff in there. I think within that one best practice, there was probably 9-10 tips, but all of those brought really great value. So appreciate that, Lee. And just one final best practice I want to close on, and that is focus on the things that drive performance. How would you maybe sum this one up?
Yeah. So to keep this one will be probably a bit more succinct and sharp. So this one's really about, and I referenced it just a minute ago, not waiting for your culture to be great to get a great successful business. And I think sometimes hear that. It's like, well, let's get the culture right and then everything will fall into place. And that's true. But if you focus on team climate 1, you get there quicker. But the third truth for us is actually, if you focus on performance, then quite often that fixes culture. Because there's several things that are important to, and what I mean by this is, let's take the complaints area. If you look for your high performers in complaints and you train them on what high performance looks like and you coach them, then guess what? You're starting to invest in them. You're starting to show them what good looks like. That helps them. And people go, oh, do you know what? I never knew that. Thank you for stepping in and showing me a way instead of asking me the question, what would I do differently next time? I train it. I get some training. I get some coaching. My manager is proximate to me. They're here to support. So actually, from a climate perspective, when you just start to focus on performance in a positive way, rather than just giving feedback all the time and it being developmental, get some training, focus on high performing behaviors, then actually I start to be more engaged anyway. With any training and improvement program, we would always say, introduce those 10 things I just talked about. Because when I start to do those in conjunction with some training, that's how we sustain a change. So if you're doing customer service training and you just put people through some customer service training and walk away, guess what? My habits will come back instantly. But when I find the bright spots, profile high performance, train it, coach it, get leaders to do those 10 things that are really important for team climate, then, my climate improves, my mindset improves, my capability improves. And if we're fanatical improvers, and if we're fanatical about improving things, and I've got that continual improvement lens, and I'm getting all of the barriers out of the way, then I reduce friction. And they're the 4 things that we say drives performance: climate, mindset, capability, and reduction of friction, and you get performance. And quite often when we do performance improvement work, whether it's improving a complaints function or getting customer operations or revenue teams to be better in the conversation, we do those 4 things. We focus on those things and we get performance in the right way. CSAT goes up, NPS goes up, effort scores go up, or effort scores come down, E scores go up, and we get all of these amazing customer improvements. What we've noticed is this really interesting correlation with employee engagement and attrition. Employee engagement tends to go up. The way I feel about my leaders goes up. Attrition starts to go down. And we start to have a nice high-performing team. And we all tend to feel good. And when we feel good, innovation shows up too. So, focus on performance. And then let's go back to the earlier point I made, which is loads of little team climates all performing creates your great culture. So it's almost in reverse of the belief, if you know what I mean. It's a backwards approach to getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, lots of really great stuff there, Lee. And I think some really tangible learnings for all the viewers to take away and start to implement within their customer environments as well, to try and create more of that customer-centric sort of strategy. I really appreciate you joining me today for the chat. I think that's a really great place to end it. And thanks again, Lee, and also thanks everybody for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you, Charlie.